Good morning, and thank you for joining us for this 46th session in our 10-minute Wellbeing Tips for Managers series. This morning, we're returning for the last time to that leadership building block of well-being. And over the last 11 months, we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we become better leaders and support well-being in our teams. And we are so grateful for all the questions and insights you've all offered us about this topic. Many of you have also shared that you're trying to put some of this into practice. You're continuing to be learning leaders, but you've also shared that it's challenging. It's challenging to continue with that commitment to learning when we have all these competing priorities. And that's why we are devoting this session to you and to our ability to continue as learning leaders with a sense of compassionate self-awareness. So let's just break that term down. Compassionate self-awareness is, of course, compassion. It's awareness. And then those considerations we have to take into consideration when we are applying it to ourselves. Compassion, as you know, is that feeling that arises when we are confronted with another person's suffering, and we want to feel, and we are motivated to relieve that suffering in some ways. And we've talked about the importance of feeling and showing compassion in several of our sessions. Kristen Neff describes self-compassion as showing the same care and concern we have for others to ourselves, and offering ourselves warmth, understanding, and acceptance when we make mistakes, suffer, or just have a difficult time. This can be challenging for us as caring professionals. We have a tendency to be really tough on ourselves and to ignore our own needs, even when that is not good for us or the people we lead. Which is why I like this quote: through self-compassion, we become an inner ally instead of an inner enemy. Now, Neff describes three elements of self-compassion. The first is self-kindness. When we move from being harshly critical of ourselves and our shortcomings, whether those are real or just perceived, to being more supportive and encouraging. We then protect ourselves from our own attacks on ourselves, and we become more unconditionally accepting of ourselves. Then common humanity. How many times have you felt that you're the only person struggling with someone? Now, as we've heard during our sessions, that's not true. We all have shared concerns. And so common humanity happens when we remember that we're human, that we're connected to the rest of humanity, and that all of us struggle, and all of us make mistakes at times. All of us struggle with motivation at times. And last but not least, mindfulness. Now, in session 36 of this series, Jennifer Salaberry introduced us to the importance of mindfulness for our well-being. And mindfulness, as you know, is paying attention to our present moment experiences without judgment. Some of us think of mindfulness as meditation, the kind of meditation we might do with the Calm app. And Mindful Mondays are one of Healthy at Hopkins' most popular 15-minute meetups. And if you haven't been to one of those, I really encourage you to do that. But mindful awareness is something we can practice at any time. It invites us to resist the temptation to rush around multitasking and to simply be here now. Thich Nhat Hanh taught us that the present moment is the only moment available to us, and it is the door to all moments. Present moment self-awareness invites us to notice ourselves, our feelings, our sensations, our thoughts, and our actions moment by moment without self-judgment. We may not be able to choose what happens to us in any moment, but we do have the choice about how we respond to that. And I love this teaching from Eckhart Tolle, who says the power for creating a better future is contained in the present moment. You create a good future by creating a good present. So to summarize, self-compassionate self-awareness is noticing our thoughts, feelings, choices, and behaviors moment by moment, without judgment, with curiosity, and with kindness and caring for ourselves. So how then does this self-compassionate self-awareness support us as we continue our learning journey in terms of being the kind of leaders and managers who support well-being? Well, we've learned a lot over the last 11 months. And now I'm going to invite us as we move forward into the next year to think about how we have approached our learning in the past. I know I tend to start out fast. I'm so energetic and committed. I'm on my way to my learning journey. And then, life happens and I get stuck. So it's really helpful to notice our patterns and to think about what we struggle with as we're trying to practice new behaviors or new leadership behaviors. Are you the kind of person who expects mastery and perfection? Do you perhaps become discouraged when you don't see rapid progress? Maybe you're somebody who just doesn't like to fail. And so maybe you don't challenge yourself as much as you could because you're trying to avoid failure. On the other hand, maybe you're somebody who says, you know what? Failure is just an opportunity for reflection and learning, and I'm just going to fail myself into success. So we have different types of patterns in our learning, but there are also many practical challenges, such as time, the ability to focus, competing priorities, things that get in the way of our motivation. But a very common and disruptive challenge to our ongoing commitment to be learning leaders is, you want to guess? The influence of our inner critic or inner critics. We all have them, and they come in many shapes and sizes. That can be the perfectionist inner critic who wants it all to be perfect all the time. It can be that person who wants to protect you from taking on too much or trying more than you're up for. It can be the person who wants to help you or parent you. Maybe it's the doubter, the person who says, I doubt you're really up for that. So we're all busy trying to be present, open, curious, courageous, self-aware leaders. And you know what? That voice keeps showing up in our heads. Now, the challenge with the inner critic is that the more we ignore them or try to push them away, the louder they get. They are simply going to continue to be in our space if we don't find a way to manage them. And I'm going to offer you two practices that I've found very helpful for dealing with inner critics. The first is grateful reflection, and the second is boundary setting. Now, grateful reflection really says, how has this voice protected me in the past? Maybe this voice that says, okay, this is dangerous, don't try this, like you might make a mistake here. Maybe that's the protective voice that has really kept you safe in the past. So in certain settings, this voice is useful to you, and you want to be able to recognize that with appreciation. But the other is the boundary setting, because there are times when this voice shows up that it's not helpful to you, and you want to be able to say, I'm putting some boundaries around your influence over me right now. Now, I'm going to share a story from one of my coaching clients. She's given me permission to share this with you. She's a leader who found that she had a very loud imposter syndrome voice who was constantly saying to her, you shouldn't do this. People are going to think you're less than. You could make a mistake. You could look foolish. You could look underinformed. And she learned to recognize when this voice would show up. And now she's from the South. And the technique she uses, which has worked super well for her, is to say, oh, there you are, bless your heart. You're showing up again to protect me. But you know what? I don't need you today. And I did not invite you to this meeting. And as funny as that sounds, her ability to notice and put some boundaries around this inner critic voice has been transformational for her. Another practice, ABCD, is something we can use if we feel that we're swept away in the moment, we're struggling to be present. A, as you become aware that you're being swept away of what's happening to you, just pause and then breathe. Breathe slowly and intentionally and deeply, and let that breath ground you and anchor you. And then when you feel a little more settled, just lean into some compassionate curiosity and say, what's going on here? What do I need? And so that, friends, compassionate curiosity does not include the questions, what's wrong with me, or why can't I just ... And when we've had that moment to be compassionately curious about what's going on, we can then decide what our choice is going to be in that next moment. In her book, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life, Dr. Marilee Adams explores the difference between being in a judger mindset and a learner mindset, and how we can use our questions to switch ourselves back into that learning pathway. I highly recommend it, as I've told you before. But finding self-compassionate questions that work for you is important. So here are a few I've found helpful when I have this negative voice going on in my head about my challenges. Is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it fair to me to think about myself like this? Is it kind? Who do I choose to be in this moment? How do I choose to feel at this moment? How else can I think about this? what is this really about? And what do I need in this moment? And that brings us to the last practice I'm going to share, RAIN, which is about helping us acknowledge our needs. RAIN is a 4-step mindful and self-compassionate process in which we recognize what is happening to us in the moment, and we allow that experience just to be there. We don't numb it, push it away, or deny it. We just allow it to be there. And then we investigate that experience with interest and with care for ourselves. And finally, we nurture ourselves with self-compassion. We really then pay attention to what it is we need in that moment to move forward. If you'd like to learn more about this process, and I highly encourage it, I would recommend Tara Brach's masterclass on the Calm app, in which she teaches the RAIN practice. I'm also going to recommend Elizabeth Gilbert's class, Creative Living Beyond Fear, in which she talks about managing fear and that inner critic. Now, at Johns Hopkins Medicine, we all have free access to the Calm app, and I've put the link to that sign up on this slide for you. Here are a whole lot more resources to support your practice of self-compassionate self-awareness. And I'd like to draw your attention to the Self-Compassion in Action class. That's a 45-minute class offered by Healthy at Hopkins. And you can get access to this on the Healthy at Hopkins Wellness menu. And here are today's Learning Leader tips. Manager tip 51. Remember that you deserve your attention and compassion as much as anyone else. Try and find that compassionate question that you can ask yourself when you notice yourself being harsh on yourself. And manager tip 52, hey, get to know your inner critic. It's going to be so much easier to turn down the volume on them and set boundaries when you recognize them in action. It's been almost a year since 10-Minute Wellbeing Tips for Manager launched on September the 22nd of last year, and we started our learning journey together. Next week, we're going to explore the lessons that you've learned over the year, some of the successes and impact, and also what you would need to support your ongoing learning and success. As always, we encourage you to use and share the resources of the Office of Wellbeing and Healthy at Hopkins. And now I welcome any questions and insights that you have.